Hey, so last time we talked, I showed you how to set up a SQLite database in your browser or in your JavaScript application so it can manage state for your JavaScript app. And we did this by setting up a database provider, giving a DB name that then provides to your app. And then in your app, you can use these hooks, use query to get a reactive subscription to the database. So that way when somebody mutates some state in the database, you get called back with that state and can re-render your app. So kind of one problem with this, right, is that TypeScript doesn't understand SQL. So I'm doing this query, just like count, and then it's coming back, and I have to do a cast, right, because TypeScript doesn't know what type this is. I could get this cast wrong. Maybe I put the wrong type, or maybe I changed the type of count later in my schema, and now, the cast is wrong again. But, databases are strongly typed, right? They have schemas, and schemas define their types. So can we get TypeScript to understand this? And so I'm going to show like kind of a project I've been working on. It's kind of early release. It's called typed-sql, and it essentially is integrating understanding of SQL into TypeScript, so we can get strong types for our queries. So let's go ahead and add those dependencies. We have some early release stuff, so we're going to get next channel of type-sql, and then use the normal CLI. So the CLI is what watches your TypeScript project and creates the correct types. It's a TypeScript extension that creates the correct types while you're developing. And then this is a runtime component. It's really just type definitions that are used by the CLI to understand which are queries and which aren't queries, and which are schema definitions. So let me show you an example. So our schema is now going to be managed in TypeScript. So we're going to create a TypeScript file that'll hold our schema. And I guess one thing we should do before that is add a command so we can run our CLI tool. So this will run the type-sql CLI tool that'll generate our types while we're working on our schema and whatnot. So let's go ahead and start that. What's it, SQL watch? Yeah. Cool. So we can import this thing called schema from type-sql. And then we can say our app schema is this thing. Cool. So it's going to be essentially our old schema. So we'll create table if not exists, test, and I'll have an ID, integer, primary key, and I'll have a count integer. And yeah, Copilot's annoying. I usually have it disabled. I think I'll disable it again. Okay. So yeah, as we see, we saved our schema definition and we got a type generated for our app schema. Our app has a table test has an ID and a count. Cool thing is we can, and we see these are nullable. Well, we'll say we know they're not going to be null, so we can add not null to both of these, and now our types are updated. So yeah, now we export our schema, which is essentially just a type, and we go to our app, and we can start using this type. So there's a use query to hook, which is integrated with type-sql, and we'll go ahead and use that. So yeah, use query 2, it's kind of the same thing, except now we're going to call app schema.sql. So this tells the type generator which schema we're using, because the schema is what drives the types, and then we can do our query. And we have no bind parameters, so just do that. Cool. And now we can see we got this inline generated type, count. Formatting is not perfect, so I need to fix that with the extension. But we got count. So we know we're going to get thing with a count, a result with a count, and the type is number. And let's see. So let's pull the data property off of this. So now we know, okay, we have records of number. And we really only want the first one. So we have a first helper to get that off the data. And now we see Okay, we either have a count or we have undefined, because right, there could be no rows in the database, so that makes sense. We either have a row with a count that we selected or undefined. Well, this shows us zero. Cool. And maybe we call it res instead of counts. And let's go make sure our app still works. There it is. So we've got typed-sql, or static types end-to-end with our queries. Yeah, and just be aware, typed-sql is very early stages of development. Lots of kinks still being worked out, but you can do cool things. Like it even understands literals. If you like select some literal from the database, it understands joins, left joins, right joins, and understands like the change of nullability when you join, and working on aggregate functions right now. And if you want to check that out, it's the typed-sql repository.